Virtual Labor Education Workforce and Youth Development Committee, November 14th, 2024. We are on HPA-T Comcast and Frontier Government Channels 96 and 6032. It will also be streamed via hpa-tv.org, the HPA-TV Facebook page, and HPA-TV's Roku TV, Apple TV, and Amazon TV apps. Will also be rebroadcast and made available on the HPA-TV YouTube channel. I am Marilyn Rossetti, Councilwoman. I chair this committee. Hold on a second. I'm trying to find out where my other colleagues are. And we have with us tonight Director Baldwin, Director of Department of Family, Children, and Youth, and with her is Christopher Marcelli, Assistant Director of Youth Services. On the call with us, we have our Corp Counsel, Attorney Danielle Combs, and Assistant to Councilwoman Rossetti, Charmaine Craig. And I was told that Councilman Gale would be here. I want to wait 1 second. Councilwoman Bilodeau asked to be excused as she had something. So can you hold on 1 second, Director Baldwin? Okay, thanks. Let's hold on 1 second. You know what? I will call the meeting to order. I'll talk slow. I will read the agenda item. Let's see, we have one agenda item and it was, a bigger agenda item. So we thought it'd be good if you came and, presented to us, some of the, information with each of the three grants that we're doing. So it is agenda item 2.1, but it's from Mayor Arulaplam with an accompanying resolution authorizing the city to accept three grants in the amount of $129,393, $36,600, and $17,208 from the state of Connecticut's Department of Children and Families in support of the Department of Families, Children, and Youth. And as I said, our presenters tonight will be maybe both, could be one. But I wanted to wait 1 second. I'm gonna actually make a call, so hold on a second. All right, Councilman Gale will be here in a moment. So we will wait 1 second.
No worries at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Usually we're 6, but because it was a special, we thought maybe it's nicer for people to do it at 5:30. So I don't know.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. No
Okay.
problem. No worries. We're not in any hurry, so.
Oh, here he is. See, I knew he would be here. All right. So Councilman Gale, thank you, John. Thank you, Councilman. I've called the meeting to order and I have read the agenda item, and we have with us Director Baldwin and Assistant Director Chris Marcelli, and they are now going to explain the three different grants from the state of Connecticut.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. My apologies, everyone, for my tardiness here.
No,
So,
no. I
No
told
worries.
them we usually have it at 6. Today we had it at 5:30, so we're all set.
okay.
Thank you.
Yes, no worries at all. Thank you so much for having us here. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to come before you today to speak about this very important grant for our department. We've created a brief PowerPoint presentation for you. If that's all right, Madam Chair, I would like to share that. Thank you. Are you able to see it okay?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So the Department of Families, Children, and Youth, and again, thank you for the introduction. I am the Director of the Department of Families, Children, and Youth, Christina Baldwin, and I am joined this evening by my Assistant Director for Youth Services, Chris Marcelli. So we are going to take turns in presenting this slide to you to give you an overview of this grant program and what it supports, and then we're happy to take any questions at the end as well. So our department, the Department of Families, Children, and Youth, specifically our Youth Services Division of the department, functions as Hartford's Youth Service Bureau. So just as an overview of the contents of what we're going to present to you this evening, we're going to give you a very broad overview of what a Youth Service Bureau is and the functions of the Youth Service Bureau. We will give you an overview of the grant program for which this resolution has been submitted. Then we'll give you a very broad overview of the programs in our Youth Services Division. A listing of partnerships that we currently have through the division. And then we'll end by giving you some metrics and highlights for 2024, and then giving you a broad overview of the grant budget. So with that, I am actually going to turn it over to Chris to explain to you a bit more about what the Youth Service Bureau is and the law under state statute that pertains to it.
Great, thank you. And good evening to the committee. So I would like to just run through the Youth Service Bureau law really quick, the relevant state statutes. I know normally reading directly off of a PowerPoint slide is generally not advised in presentation, but since we're going to be reading off the legal language, I am going to run through it really quick. Some key passages.
Only
It's
if it's
all
longer,
combined
Chris.
within, all of the law is consistent within Volume 3, Title 10, Chapter 164, Sections 1019 M through Q. So it's all very condensed. You don't have to go searching around. If you ever want to go reference it, it's all in one place. But some key points. The role is the evaluation, planning, coordination, and implementation of services. The types of services that are provided for by this law, very broad, right? Prevention and intervention programs for delinquent, pre-delinquent, pregnant, parenting, and troubled youths, referred to the Bureau by schools, police, juvenile courts, adult courts, local youth-serving agencies, parents, and self-referrals. So that refers to the many ways in which these kids can come into the Youth Service Bureau seeking services. Purposes of the services, also pretty broad, shall be designed to meet the needs of the youth by diversion of troubled youths from the justice system, as well as the provision of opportunities for all youths to function as responsible members of their community. So often when folks talk about the Youth Service Bureau obligations, there's a strong focus on the diversionary aspect of that specifically because the state mandates there are much clearer and sort of condensed into very specific programming. But the mandate of the Youth Service Bureaus as established by the state of Connecticut is a lot broader than that and does provide for a lot of more sort of broad-based youth development work as conducted by this division or our partners. The manner of service provision also covers that. Youth Service Bureau shall be the coordinating unit of community-based services to provide comprehensive delivery of prevention, intervention, treatment, and follow-up services. And the funding, of course, is split into 3 grants, as we've already laid out for you in the resolution and elsewhere in this presentation today. That's sort of spread across a few relevant sections of the statute as the state gradually added on to what it was they were providing through the Department of Children and Families in funding in order to cover some of the relevant mandates for youth service bureaus. It does require matching funds provided by the municipality in question. Those matching funds for fiscal 25 are, of course, already in the city budget for fiscal 25.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Okay, so today's grant. Okay, so today's grant, the Department of Families, Children, and Youth, our Youth Services Division, as I mentioned earlier, serves as Hartford's Youth Service Bureau. So we are responsible under state statute for the coordination of programs as it relates to juvenile justice, child welfare, mental health, and positive youth development, amongst other programs. So the state of Connecticut Department of Children and Families, or DCF, has invited the city of Hartford to receive this YSB funding. In full transparency, this funding is given to every municipality that has a youth service bureau. And that funding happens on a 2-year basis. So this grant is renewable. It's given to youth service bureaus to support the functions and operation of the Youth Service Bureau every 2 years. So this particular grant period is for the period of July 2024 through June 30th, 2025, but then there will be another year on top of that through June of 2026. And sometimes the amounts fluctuate a tiny bit from year to year, depending on things like, for example, maybe cost of living or other things like that. But the amount that we are being awarded for this current fiscal year are the amounts that you had already mentioned before, Councilwoman Rossetti. So approximately $129,393 will be to support the main grant program. The supplement grant program is approximately $36,600, and then the YSB enhancement grant program is approximately $17,208. As Chris mentioned, there's also an annual catch match that we have to provide as a requirement of this grant in the amount of what is the main grant, so that $129,393, and we provide that with City of Hartford funds, and those are funds that have already been included in our adopted FY 2025 budget through our general fund dollars. So these funds will be used to support, mainly the bulk of the funding goes to support positions and activities that happen within our youth services division. We may also award some of that funding to local service providers, but the vast bulk of it goes to support our staff and our direct programs. And Chris, I'll turn it back over to you.
Sure. So the specific breakdown of this, at least in terms of the 3 major categories of where this money is going, as the director said, primarily where this grant funding is going is towards staffing. So the way that the YSB budget provides for staffing is that they have their own separate line for, the wages, but also a fringe amount, which they do cap lower than the city provides for benefits. So there's a limit to how much of employee fringe can be put under this budget using the state's budget format. So some of that 125 you see there for staffing is fringe for the 1.1 FTE. That 1.1, of course, is broken across 2 different individuals. So it is wages and fringe for them. The other 2 categories that we have here are the fixed costs. I'm going backwards, I apologize. But we'll just read this chart from bottom to top instead of top to bottom. The fixed costs is a very broad category within their budget format. It contains a lot of individual things that are put in the notes to the right. So the biggest thing in that category in terms of the budget we submitted to the state will be the stipends for youth for things that they are participating in. And then the rest of it is spread across a lot of different, smaller miscellaneous costs, technology, equipment, communications, marketing, food, travel, training. Really just all of those ancillary costs for all of the different things that the department is working on under its Youth Service Bureau obligations. And then the last 20 grand of that is to go towards positive youth development programs. And that is, of course, then for things that we will actually be providing as services as a division in order to serve the youth. I'm sorry, I just muted myself real quick for no reason. The program overview of a variety of work that the department's currently working on. I won't go through all of these things in detail, but this is a quick overview of all the different projects that are under the division's purview right now or recently. All of the youth justice work is very, very related, as we were saying already, to the specific mandates placed upon a youth service bureau by the state. So that has to do in a variety of ways with justice-involved youth, regardless of sort of where they are in that continuum. So, the first couple things on there, truancy and defiance in family with service needs, that's for youth who have committed things that are called status offenses, which are not actual crimes and would not result in justice system involvement, but still need still need a response from youth serving organizations of some kind. So the youth and families are provided with services in response to that to prevent the situation from escalating. The next several things on there, the Juvenile Review Board, Youth Violence Prevention Intervention, Youth Offender Care Coordination, Compass Peace Builders, Roca Young Mothers, that stuff, all of that programming is for youth who are already justice involved in some way or another. Some of it is diversionary in terms of preventing them from winding up in the court system or actually arrested. Some of it is responding to what needs to happen after that has unfortunately already taken place. Some of it is specifically violence intervention, and sort of follow-up work for youth who have been involved in violent incidents. And then down at the bottom for that, there's also wraparound youth supports for homelessness, which is something relatively recent the department's been working on, trying to figure out how to better offer services through our partners for youth who are dealing with housing instability. And the racial and ethnic disparities work group, which is, a lot of different partners getting together to share out data on all of these things and sort of do that ongoing monitoring of whether or not and how to address the disparities in that data in terms of which youth are we talking about? What are the differences in the rates of what they are and aren't actually getting arrested for and how the system is responding to that? Working together to reduce those disparities, but also to make sure that there is a lot more sunlight on them than maybe there otherwise would be. The other two categories seem a little bit smaller in terms of the number of projects, but are not any smaller in terms of the amount of effort. Under workforce development, there is, of course, the Summer Youth and Employment and Learning Program, which actually makes up, I think, a majority or around half of the division's municipal budget. So the city dollars that this division receives, about half of that actually goes out for the Summer Youth Employment and Learning Program, which offers employment opportunities to around 800 youth every summer. Hartford Opportunity Youth Collaborative is a very, very broad, initiative with a lot of different partners. The mayor chairs that collaborative. It's also then run collaboratively by officials from the city, from Capital Workforce Partners, from United Way, and a whole bunch of other partners working with them to sort of address the needs of opportunity youth in the city. And the Youth Service Corps, which is a partnership with Our Piece of the Pie, which is another employment opportunity program for partly disengaged youth. The youth engagement work is much, much, much broader. Hartford Unity is a 3-year-long ARPA-funded spree of partnerships, dozens of contracts a year the last few years. Year 3 just got wrapped up. The reporting has been coming in. The financials have been coming in. That was a very large undertaking by the division over the last 3 years, sub-granting out a great deal of American Rescue Plan money to dozens of providers in our community doing a wide variety of youth engagement work. And the Hartford Youth Advisory Board, which sort of first and foremost provides civic engagement, training, and opportunities for our youth. Director, would you like to take this?
Perfect. We just gave you here some highlights from last fiscal year that the division or the Youth Service Bureau was able to achieve. So 2,423 disengaged and disconnected youth served in our Youth Service Corps, earning a total of nearly $7 million and completing a total of 1,783 service learning hours since the program's inception in July 2016. 804 youth were served in the Summer Youth Employment and Learning Program in FY24. 345 youth served in crisis intervention and reentry programs as part of our Youth Justice Initiative with grants that we gave out to Compass Peace Builders and Our Piece of the Pie through a competitive RFP process. 102 youth were served by the Juvenile Review Board as a means of diversion from juvenile offenses, and through, a formal restorative justice approach. 65 youth served as part of our rapid response program, which is a coordinated response by our YVPI, our Youth Violence Prevention and Intervention Work Group, that addresses the needs of the youth who are involved in violent crimes, the highest percentage of those crimes being gunshots. We served 80 youth that were truant or habitually truant that were referred to our Youth Service Bureau that were then referred out to community supports. And as the assistant director mentioned, 9,721 youth were served through our Unity grants, which were funded through American Rescue Plan dollars in FY24, with a total of $1.5 million in awarded funding. So with that, we are happy to open it up for any questions at all. And I can stop screen share, or I can leave it up if you want me to refer back to any other slides. But thank you again for the opportunity to be able to present this evening.
Thank you, Director, and thank you, Assistant Director of Youth Services. Councilman Gale, I will go to you. And
Thank you. Yeah, let me ask a couple of questions. And in some respects, it's I apologize for sort of my ignorance on some of these programs. But since you're here and since you're presenting, and I'll take the opportunity to educate myself, if nothing else. The Juvenile Review Board. Talk to me about that. Who is on the Juvenile Review Board? Where do they meet? How often do they meet? And how do they get cases referred to them?
Yes, that's an excellent question. Thank you so much for asking that, Councilman Gale. So the Juvenile Review Board is a diversionary program for youth that have committed low-level misdemeanors or other, sort of non-violent crimes. And referrals come through the Juvenile Review Board. They can either come through two mechanisms, through the police department or through the juvenile courts. So referrals can be either pre-arrest or post-arrest, but the purpose of the referrals is that once the youth is referred to the Juvenile Review Board and they have completed what we call a panel recommendation, which is a restorative justice approach to reconciling, the harm that was done to either, the youth, the community, or to another individual. Once that panel recommendation is completed, then essentially that young person's record is wiped clean. So it's a diversion mechanism to keep them from entering further into the system. So again, referrals can be made pre-arrest by police or post-arrest through the juvenile court. The panel is made up of, so we, through our Youth Service Bureau, actually partners with the Village for Families and Children that administer the Juvenile Review Board on behalf of the city of Hartford. And so they coordinate the panel. So I cannot give out the names of the panel members, but the panel is comprised of volunteers that are connected to the city of Hartford. And so the panel, I can say, are always looking for volunteers. So if there's any interest, you can feel free to reach out to me and we can connect you that way. However, this group of panel, they meet as needed. So whenever there is a referral, in general, there are at least monthly meetings of the panel. However, if there are more or less, of referrals that are coming in, they'll adjust accordingly. So they do meet with the families and the young people themselves. And after listening to their side of the story and after assessing the referral information and getting any feedback from either the court or the police, that panel will collectively make a decision on what the restorative justice measures will be, what that restorative reconciliation with the community will be. And then that young person has to fulfill the recommendation of the panel. They are also connected to case management through the village. And so other needs are assessed through that case management as well. But again, once they have successfully completed that panel recommendation, then their record is wiped clean. And I should mention that it's only for first and second time offenses.
And those meetings are held at the village then?
So
Mhm.
yes, they can either be held at the village. I mean, at one point in time, they were held at one of the offices at the police department itself, which actually they actually got really good response there. But if a family is not comfortable attending one location, they have the option to adjust or change that up. Or if a young person isn't comfortable going on one side of town, then they can adjust accordingly. So
Thank you for that.
you're welcome. And I should say that of course during COVID and shortly thereafter, panels were still held, but they were held virtually.
Understood. Second question. You and Chris, Chris walked through all these, I mean, many different programs, and clearly the amount of money we're talking about here is just a piece of a much larger budget that funds all these other
Correct. It's
programs.
approximately 10% of our overall youth services budget.
Okay, and then I get the sense that a considerable amount of the actual services are provided by different entities with whom you have contracts, like Compass Peace Builders and the like. I'm wondering which of these things that were set out, which of these services are actually provided in-house, that is provided directly by the department, and if so, where does the department provide these services? I shouldn't assume anything. Tell me where does the department provide these things, and what does the department directly provide, not do through contractors?
Yes, sure. Actually, so if you're talking about direct program, right? Because the department and Chris's team provides a tremendous amount of management, oversight, contract compliance. Obviously we're a large funder of these programs, so there's a lot that entails with that. We are also, a thought partner, strategizer, convener. So out of the list that Chris mentioned, so the truancy, defiance of school rules, and family with service needs referrals come directly into the Youth Service Bureau. So Chris's team actually has to screen them for compliance and has that initial conversation back and forth with the school or the families on those referrals. So all of that work happens. And then for the actual case management engagement, that is as of last fiscal year, that was done being sent out again to the village. However, as of this fiscal year, I'm very excited to say, we'll be fully staffed in that focus area, our youth justice focus area of the Youth Services Division. So it is our intention that with a fully staffed team that we will be doing that case management directly. Again, I mentioned the Juvenile Review Board, that one, we work with the village on partnering with that. The Youth Violence Prevention and Intervention Work Group, we directly coordinate and run and facilitate those meetings along with our rapid response protocols. So when a young person under the age of 25 is shot, we directly coordinate with the police and with the hospitals and with our partners to coordinate services for the family. The families themselves, the services themselves, obviously rely on our partners to provide the support for the services. But
when you're coordinating these meetings, where are the meetings held?
So the rapid response meetings, what we call a tier 1. So when a young person is shot, we have a very, very quick response. So within 5 hours is the goal, right? Unless it's in the middle of the night. In that case, it'll be first thing in the morning. That is actually a virtual meeting that we hold because it has to be an immediate response. So that one is virtual. The Youth Violence Prevention and Intervention Work Group is a meeting that is held in person at City Hall. The Racial and Ethnic Disparities Committee, that is a meeting that I co-chair with Martha Stone from Center for Children's Advocacy. So she and I are the co-chairs for that. Those meetings convene in person at our community centers, most often at Parker Community Center. And that meeting happens on a quarterly basis. The wraparound youth supports for homelessness. That is also a meeting that Chris's team leads and coordinates and runs directly. Those meetings, so far, they've only taken place here at City Hall as well. In addition to that, we also run directly the Hartford Youth Advisory Board. So out of the other 4 additional programs, the Youth Advisory Board is one of the programs that we run directly. So meeting regularly with the youth and actually running that program happens directly with our staff in the division. And they meet, I mean, they're youth, they're young people. So where they meet is very highly dependent on where they can get to, especially in the after school hours. So a lot of those meetings are virtual, but they do in-person community service types of activities.
Wow, you guys have a lot on your plate.
A lot, yes.
I mean, kudos to you for coordinating
Thank you.
all of that stuff. And that rapid response. I know we get. I don't know if we get every referral, but we get a lot of referrals as council members. Not referrals. We get notification from the police department
Correct, yes.
of shootings, and we note that a tremendous amount of these things, unfortunately, seem to involve young people.
Yes.
I can imagine you're pretty busy with some of these things.
Absolutely. And then if you can imagine, because, when a young person is shot, it's, everything else has to be dropped. That absolutely becomes the highest priority. So Chris and his team, whatever it is that they're working on, it has to stop, and then they have to shift.
Councilman Gale,
to
do you
pull
mind if
together.
I ask her a little more on that? Can you?
No, go for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now that you're on, because that was one of the things. So certainly we get the information when someone's been shot, unfortunately, and then you talked about, getting a hold of not only them but the family within. What is it we provide to them? What do we, help them with in a time that, is pretty
Yeah.
probably the most stressful ever?
Yes, absolutely, definitely. So we also, through our very, very close partnership with the police department, they notify our team directly every time there's a shooting. And again, we're talking about shooting for young people under the age of 25. So Chris's team will quickly coordinate what we call that tier 1 call, where it's essentially the info gathering and then deciding and determining who the most appropriate person is to go out to the hospital to meet with the family. This is also done in partnership with the hospitals and the Hospital Violence Intervention Program, the HVIP. So, and also it's done in collaboration with the new Office of Violence Prevention, and the director there attends these meetings as well. So what happens is we will determine the best community-based organization. Sometimes it would be determined by if they may already have a prior relationship with this young person and family, so the young person is already familiar with them. Or it could be maybe there's a certain language that the family speaks, so another organization might be appropriate. Or it could be that there's a young woman, and so then we would call on our partnership with an organization that specifically deals with young women. But anyway, that call is to determine who would be the best person to have that initial contact. So once we determine that, that partner will go out to the hospital to meet with the family. And again, it's completely up to the family if they want to meet. We just want to make sure that they know that we are here and available to them. So in the case that the family does want to engage, or that young person does want to engage, then that community-based partner will then become connected with that young person and their family, do an initial assessment, and then just start to meet the needs of that young person, whatever their needs are. We have regular update meetings as to what the changing needs may be. And again, if they need additional home services after they've been released from the hospital, we're working with the hospital to help provide those.
Director
if they-
Baldwin, quick question.
yeah, sure.
what if, because, in that situation, sometimes a youth may be afraid or the
Mhm.
family's confused.
Sure.
Do we have a mechanism that if, and I'm sure you do,
Mm.
that if they initially don't want to, we circle back with them and
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. 100%. We always circle back with them, give them an opportunity. I mean, to be in that absolutely horrific, situation, we completely understand that sometimes families aren't in the mind frame to be able to make that decision. We just want to make sure that in the moment they know that they have a network of support from the partners, led by the city, and that we're here to help support them. But if they choose not to engage, then we always go back and follow up later on to see the door for engagement is always open. Um, we also have in place, in the unfortunate case where perhaps if a young person does not survive, we also have a coordinated network of partners that can provide support to the family in going through that time, in the immediate aftermath of that event. And then so that's what happens immediately. And then, longer term, we're working with the partners longer term to, be kept abreast of whatever it is that the needs are, so that we can further connect them if they are needed. And then the larger youth violence prevention and intervention work groups are much larger group of partners, and we talk about these young people in a de-identified way. And so, like, for example, if, let's say, a young person was shot and they have a child of their own, and so now they need support with childcare, our broader network of partners will be there to be able to help step up. So we have the direct youth support, the family support, and then we also provide, if the community was affected at all, let's say an incident happened within the school system, right? Our school partners are around the table as well. And so we work very closely with them to make sure that the broader school community, or, immediate neighborhood community, has any resources or supports that they need as well.
oh, and I don't want to take up your time, Councilman
worry.
Gale, but let
No,
me
no,
ask
go.
you this question then. As we're doing all this, and maybe this is a little off, and thank you very much. This is a fantastic discussion. Um, what do we do for the people who's doing something for them?
Yes, so that is huge. I mean, I could, actually turn it over to Chris. I am always extremely concerned about our staff directly, right? It's a very, very difficult field to be in, right? And of course, our partners as well. I mean, it's not like, it takes a very, quite honestly, a very special type of person to be able to do this work and to sustain it long term. So, we are always trying to, at least, I can speak to what we do in the city, always checking in with our staff, making sure that we are offering any support that they may need. Chris is very hands-on with his staff, especially that team, because it is very difficult and challenging. We are very fortunate in that we have staff that have been professionally trained in this line of work. So they do know, have techniques and resources. And I will say that the city has a wonderful EAP program that we are always promoting to the staff to use in the event that they need it. And we also have a
And
very
do they
strong,
use it? Do they use it?
so I wouldn't know because that's confidential
Yeah,
information.
but do you
Um,
feel people hear it and think it's a great resource and
right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, I've utilized it before myself, so I can speak firsthand to that. I wouldn't know about my staff because that's completely confidential, but I do know that we constantly make it available to them and remind them that that is a benefit that's offered through our human resources department. And we also, again, we have partners, a good amount of partners in Hartford that do this work specifically. So partnerships with the trauma center over at the village, right? Or, other entities. We have a very strong, we actually have one of our staff on hand is coached as a mindfulness expert through the city's partnership with Copper Beach. They've been trained in that. So for staff meetings, we will often have them perform mindfulness exercises for the whole staff. But it's incredibly important that the staff take care of themselves. The next sort of internal initiative that I'm embarking on is to develop some type of like quiet, safe space within the office that staff can retreat to if needed.
Anything more, Councilman Gale?
Sure, I'll,
Go ahead.
couple of, and thank you for all that, Director. Uh, couple of things. And I recall that former Chief of Staff, COO Thea Montanez, was very much an advocate for these types of programs and involved very heavily in a lot of youth service type things. And I recall that she, at one point, was looking to see if the city could get some grant funding to support providing these services that you're talking about, not only for the victim of the gun violence, but the extended circle of people who may have been affected by the gun violence as well. And I think the example she would give was, you know, a kid next door who not involved at all, but happens to be in a house next door to where some gun violence took place, could also be affected. I guess there's some research that says that these people are affected. I'm just wondering if there's been any, you know, any kind of progress on that score.
Yeah. So I will say that the former COO is actually still very involved. She chairs the diversion work group of the Juvenile Justice Policy Oversight Committee at the state, which I am a part of as well. She actually just.
Why does this not surprise
It
you?
doesn't surprise you, right? Exactly.
No.
So she is actually working very hard on creating sort of statewide standardizations for specifically right now for our diversionary efforts through the Juvenile Review Board. So actually just spoke with her yesterday. She had her meeting yesterday.
Tell her we said hi and we miss her.
Definitely. So she's still very involved, and actually prior to while she was still here, we were able to secure some grant funding for what we call a youth offender care coordination. Now that is funding that very specifically goes towards providing services and supports for repeat juvenile offenders of violent crimes. So again, it's an additional layer of services for our most in need young people. So those that are facing the highest level of need when it comes to youth violence. So we do have that grant. You know, thankfully we're going into our second year of that grant, of a 3-year grant, which is phenomenal. And then also, you know, that she was very active in establishing the citywide mindfulness and health and well-being initiative for the entire city, which, you know, again, our staff do take advantage of often. However, Councilman, we are always looking for grant funding. And from what I have found, the funding for service providers is much less readily available than it is actually for those that need the service, which is understandable, right? But we would love to, you know, pursue any funding opportunities that we can to help further support staff that are in the work every day.
So sort of related to that question, and I mean, I'm going to be throwing out a huge question here. You know, and that is, how do we reduce gun violence? So, I mean, everything we've been talking about is dealing with consequences of not only gun violence, but I mean, it's a wider thing. I understand youth have many problems, thankfully, that besides just gun violence, but gun violence is such a huge problem. And I, you know, and not that I'm expecting you to have any answers. But just wondering, you know, any light on the horizon? Do we think that somewhere, someday, somebody's going to be able to convince these kids to resolve their conflicts in some different way?
Yeah, I mean, so that is the work, right? So that's the work
Yeah.
that we collectively do. And, I'm really excited and applaud Mayor Aralam for starting this Office of Violence Prevention, because I think that that is part of a big charge of that office as well. And it's very nice, again, to have a really good working relationship with the director of that department, because, again, my department, as we just shared tonight, is through state statute, is charged with focusing on youth violence specifically, right? But that's just a piece of the puzzle. So we have to make sure that we are working collectively as a community to identify some of that. Some of the charge with Chris, and Chris has done a phenomenal job. He's new with us, just 3 months in. He's hit the ground running. But in conversations that we've had, we are going to start to look more. We do it now, but start to have an even stronger focus on prevention efforts, right? So right now we're very heavily on the intervention side, which of course is absolutely essential because we want to be responsive. But where, the most impact can come would be on the prevention side. That would have the most sustaining impact. That would have the most, financial impact, actually. So these types of efforts start young. They start in elementary school even, right? And ingraining a culture within children. So it's a very long-term approach. But under the direction of Chris and his team through our Youth Service Bureau, we are going to start to incorporate more of those prevention methods into the work that we do.
Well, certainly, certainly wish you a tremendous amount of success with that. And Chris, don't get burned out. Hang in, stick around. Look forward. Thank you so much for your time this evening, both of you. And look forward to hearing more over the course of the next year. And I'm sure at budget time we'll hear some more as to what's going on. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate the time.
Thank you, Councilman. And Chris, I feel like you look a little worried already, so don't get too, okay, good. Maybe that's just your
He's
game
not
face.
worried.
Okay, good.
Resting worried face. Is that it?
Okay, that's what it is. Okay. Just real quick to circle back to one of the slides, just kind of, I'm curious, it's more two things, kind of a definition. I certainly probably could define what delinquent is. And what are we saying is pre-delinquent? That was one of the words. I'm curious, is that when we think we know? And what would be the identifiers of that would kind of say, hey, we need to.
Sure. I think I'll take this one real quick. As we were going through in the program's overview, at the top of the order, there was stuff that I mentioned about truancy, defiance of school rules, family with service needs. It's an old designation. There's a few other things under that umbrella. I always struggle to have them off the top of my head. I think it's indeed one of them is indecent and immoral conduct. One of them is beyond the control of the parent. And the third one is runaway status. So all of those things, those would be in the category. Those are like the prime examples of the pre-delinquency category, because those aren't crimes, right? Those are not arrestable offenses, but they are all varying degrees of serious issues that still need to be addressed. They're strong risk factors for that youth winding up in the system in one way or another. So the sort of theory of change there, if you will, is that you have to intervene at those points with those youth. You're already past the point of prevention and into the point of intervention where they need services, and you need to have a response protocol to stop things from progressing in a bad direction with that youth's behavior.
Okay. And then the other one was, sorry, Director.
Oh, no, sorry. I say that was exactly spot on. I'll also say that there are what are called EWIs, or early warning indicators, through the school system as well. So through our work, it was mentioned here on the slide, through the Racial and Ethnic Disparities Committee, right? That's where we really delve in and sort of look at the whole range of like that pre-delinquency and current delinquency. And a lot of that shows up, through their engagement in school, through a child's engagement in school. And if they are showing any of these EWIs, then they are more likely to, maybe possibly become justice involved, or, possibly have suspensions from school or other types of behavioral issues. So that's another way that we can capture that information as well. But that comes through strong partnerships and groups like the RED, like the RED, that meet to really delve deep into that data.
Do you feel, and I don't want to, put you in a spot or anything. Where do you feel we are going? Do you think some of this work, are we increasing? Are we decreasing? Are we about the same? Do we see a correlation with, with pre-delinquent, delinquent, and violent crime? What are your feelings? You're the
Yeah.
expert.
Yeah. So, in my conversations that I've had with, law enforcement and others, and actually like national trends show that, violence is going down. So I think that we've seen that also reflected in Hartford. However, so broadly, right, that's a great thing. But from our standpoint, since we are charged with dealing with each young person as an individual, even one shooting is too many, for us, right? But I think in terms of trends, we are seeing some decrease. I mean, I would have to go back and we do it at the end of the year, right? We do like a comparative analysis on the data in the crimes. But I think especially since we've been out of the pandemic, and there has been so much support during that time. So, I know that we saw like a lot of increase in mental health and violent crimes during the pandemic. But I think that we infuse so much in there. Like a good example are all of the money that we put in through the Unity providers, right? Those were prevention. The vast majority of them were prevention types of programs. And I think that you don't see the residual effect for a little while, but I think that we're starting to see the residual effect of that investment during such a critical time now, right? We were dropping. So like, for example, opportunity youth, which are characterized as youth that are ages 16 to 24, that are out of work and or out of school. We saw that number decreasing in Hartford specifically prior to the pandemic. As soon as the pandemic hit, that number went right back up, right? So now we are in the phase where we are working really hard to bring that number down again. And we have some really good data to look at, especially through through the Dalio education report that went out and the 119K commission. But those trends, I think we're just now starting to see them. So, I think that we'll have more information over the next year or so where we can look back and sort of do more of an in-depth comparative analysis.
Thank you very much for that.
Mhm.
Well, Councilman Gale asked a lot, you presented a lot. Chris, welcome to the team. And you have a very good, poker face. But I really want to thank you. So I would like to, is there a motion do you have a
Sure.
motion, Councilman Gale?
Sure. Yeah, I will make a motion to send this back to council with a favorable recommendation.
And I will second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, motion passes. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. And I have a motion to adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great
you.
evening.
All right,
Appreciate
bye-bye.
it.
Likewise,
Take care.
everyone.
Thank you, Councilman Gale. Thank you,
Yeah.
Attorney
Yeah,
Combs.
Attorney Coombs.
Thank you.
Thank you for being.